Good afternoon. Welcome to the session Capitalism Without Wealth. It is a question that is an inspiration based on the famous title of the book, Capitalism Without Capitalists. And the inspiration is as follows. We thought, well, we've got rising inequalities within the growth of wealth in Poland. Poland has joined not only as economy the prestigious group of the most wealthy rich economies in the world, but also within the research on household finance and consumer survey, we can see that Poland is somewhere in between Germany and Austria and Portugal and Greece in terms of average households' wealth. So basically, on one hand, we are getting rich and unequal, but on the other, the question is, to what extent are we following the way Piketty, in a way, represents, so that the wealth is, in a way, replacing income from jobs. The session is organized by a section of economic sociology and sociology of work, of labor, of the Polish Society of Sociologists. And I am Mikołaj Lewicki. Together with Bartosz Mika, will be moderating the discussion among three distinct speakers. Justyna, Kajta, Uniwersytet SWPS, Marta Olcoń-Kubicka, Polish Academy of Sciences, and Irina Dubrow-Tomescu, Polish Academy of Sciences, the same Institute of Philosophy and Sociology. We'll be having three presentations for 12 minutes, then short Q&A between moderators and the discussant, and then we'll have 15 minutes to general discussion. Without due delay, let me ask Justyna Kajta to present her research findings concerning relationships among the rich.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for having me and giving me the opportunity to share with you preliminary results of my recent research project. More specifically, I will focus on the reproduction of class position, but from the perspective of the individuals who, at least objectively, experience it in their lives. Drawing on a cultural turn in the studies on social classes, in the project we explore the life stories of academics, artists, and business managers who represent two class scenarios. They come from working class peasant families and hence experience intergenerational upward mobility, or they reproduce their parents' class position in a quite narrow sense because at least one of their parents is also respectively academic, artist, or business manager, business owner. Such composition of the interviewees led us to compare biographical experiences of people who work in the same professional fields but have different social background. And as the studies show, class background, including family capital, shapes our life opportunities, including educational and occupational ones. And we also observed that recently there is a growing number of the studies dedicated to complex character of upward mobility, the price of the ticket, as British scholar Sam Friedman calls it. But I believe it's also worth to explore the class reproduction experiences. And some researchers, of course, do it. And one of the findings is that the people tend to negotiate or deflect their privileges. By involving biographical methods, we can reconstruct the individual's educational and professional pathways. We can also learn how individuals present their life stories, what meanings they assign to it, including the meanings ascribed to their class background. Due to the time limitation, I will just shortly address two main research questions today. How do narrators view the role of their family's class background? Do they recognize it? Do they address their privileges? And what forms of capital are identified by them as being significant for their educational and professional paths? A few words about the methodology. We collect biographical narrative interviews. They were collected in the framework of two research projects, but today I will focus only on the interviews with those who represent reproduction scenarios, so those interviews collected in the framework of the project RAMClass. It's 32 interviews so far. Fieldwork is in progress, and actually we look for more business managers. So if you know someone, just let me know, because it's the most difficult group to recruit in our project. Likewise, the fieldwork, the analysis is also in the progress. But what we already see is that when people tell about their lives and make sense of their current positions, they generally acknowledge the relevance of their families, see themselves as a part of a broader multi-generational history. And I use the word multi-generational because it's also about grandparents or some extended family ties. And we identified two main ways of presenting those family transmissions. First one, it's normalization of family support. So it's normal that your family supports you. You don't problematize it. You don't compare to other people. And secondly, it's acknowledging the privileges with an open reference to unequal chances and seeing yourself as someone with better resources. Regardless the privileges are seen as privileges or not, there are different strategies of negotiation of these scopes, which led the interviewees to create a kind of space for their own agency, for their own merits, efforts, and sometimes some challenges they had to deal with. It can be a need to present another or more complex perspective which challenges the image of reproduction as having everything on a silver plate. So it can be referring to different loads of particular forms of capital at home, and it's usually economic one which is limited, but it can also be emotional capital which is limited, related to different family problems. It can be mentioning limited opportunities in local social space in case of people who grow up in small cities. It can be highlighting differences between own and a parent's professional path. So, for example, when parent was also academic, but in different discipline, it's more difficult to rely so much on parental advices or networks. And it can be referring to time of entering professional field and change of the rules of the game. For example, according to the interviews, it was easier to make big money or fast careers in the 90s than today, or being a professor in case of grandfather or grandmother was more prestigious, and the academic world was slower and less competitive. In some cases, the reproduction is presented as a source of some costs. So some narrators highlight family pressure and high expectations, tell about having parents' surname as a kind of burden. So they mention difficulties within the field due to others' false assumptions. They mention facing challenges with proving one's self-worth or being treated differently, but not necessarily better. They refer to a risk of being lost, lazy, not motivated enough because of a safe family cushion. And they feel ashamed because of their privilege and try to hide them or not use them so much. And after this general analytical introduction, I would like to say a few words about a transmission of specific capital, specific forms of capital which enhance reproduction. Starting with transmission of cultural capital, it's mostly about the horizon of opportunities. It concerns, first of all, a presence of educational ethos at home, linked with specific educational choices, including gaining foreign linguistic capital since the very beginning, gaining institutionalized cultural capital in rather carefully selected schools, which, as we know, are another space of social reproduction. As Ivona, one of the narrators, says, her parents wanted her to go to small, intimate school with a certain exclusivity. What's important is that going to university and decision about studying, it's not even a decision. It's quite obvious for the narrators. It wasn't a discussion if, but rather where. Some of them mention also that because of growing in a specific atmosphere and environment, spending time at university as a kid in cultural institution, on film sets, or on the parties with parents' friends, it was quite natural and relatively easy for them to enter those fields. And importantly, they felt there like a fish in water. They knew the code, knew how to behave, which Bourdieu could embody cultural capital. And being accustomed to the spending time with professors, artists, or businessmen is interlinked with social capital and feeling self-confident, not intimidating in the front of such people during educational or professional encounters. For example, Piotr, another narrator, recognizes it as an advantage when he compares himself with his colleagues from a work. Of course, it happens that those networks are used in a very specific ways. Some of the narrators mentioned that through parents' or grandparents' social networks, they were able to have some job experiences. As Paulina mentions, when you come from an artistic family, your parents' connections mean that you are offered your first jobs and commissions. It can be particularly important in some choking moments, meaning potentially disturbing biographical events, like longer break at university because of health issues or failure in recruitment to university. And finally, economic capital, which is strictly linked with cultural capital since it makes the given educational choices possible. It's not only about covering the school costs, but also some extracurricular lessons, but also providing the individual with financial support during the studies and sometimes long after. First of all, it frees an individual from the necessity of work during the studies. It doesn't mean that the narrators didn't work, but they tend to work in jobs which were sometimes maybe not well paid or paid at all, but were more related to their professional choices, which enhanced their chances in development of their careers. And of course, the housing capital needs to be mentioned as well. Being able to live in a family apartment, own apartment, or having at least covered the rental costs makes a huge difference because, again, it creates more distance from this state of necessity. Feeling or maybe just one last sentence. Feeling a safe financial cushion doesn't need to end with graduation, which again creates a kind of broader space for experimentation, for taking some risk, for taking some investment, as in case of Alek, who is business owner, and he can rely on his parents' support. And lastly, I would like to say a few words about some differences between the way those three forms of capital appear in the interviews. Compared to cultural and social one, the economic capital seems to be the most vague, differentiated, fragile in the narrator's stories. As I mentioned, some of them, especially artists and academics, mention limited or changing amount of available financial resources at home. Those who represent business field admit that their families had rather good or even very good financial situation. However, we have in mind in our analysis that the economic capital appears in the interviews mostly in reference to income. Sometimes some properties are mentioned, but generally it's very difficult to see the whole set of family and the individual's assets that are or could be converted into profit. Also, those references to economic capital reveal the difficulties with own class self-identification. The interviewees see themselves somewhere in the middle. Some of them, and they are mostly artists, in lower precarious class, some in upper middle, but none of them would admit belonging to upper class. And economic criterion is the one which is a sign of being not so high, somewhere in the middle in the class structure. And when they are asked about the perception of upper class, we can see that they draw a distance from it. However, in case of business managers, it's more about not having enough money, still having to work, but there is a kind of aspirational thinking. In case of artists and academics, it's rather a kind of sometimes morally loaded distance and referring not only to economic criterion, but also lifestyle, some life attitudes and values. So upper class generally seems to be also invisible, unknown, vague. So it's not so clear who are the people who belong there. And I'm closing it here. I don't have like a proper specific conclusions. And I just would like to say that we will explore those initial findings in our further analysis. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Justyna. Now I'll ask Marta Olcoń-Kubicka to present her presentation, Funding Adulthood, the Role of Parental Support in Life Transitions and Social Mobility in Poland.
Okay, thank you very much, Bartosz and Mikołaj, for inviting me to this symposium. I hope to contribute to discussion on wealth in Poland by an overview of my research on financial transfers from parents to their adult children. So for the last couple of years, I've been investigating the cultural, moral meanings of money flows and wealth flow from parents to adult children. I was interested in form and dynamic of these transfers, and specifically about culture and moral frames that shape them. I want to give you a detail about methodology. It's mostly qualitative research with some quantitative component in the form of internet survey. But the key research technique was family interviews with two generations, related generations, from both recipients and givers. So I was interested in studying the actual practices of transmitting wealth and money. And the secondary research technique was focus group interviews, when I was interested in studying discourses, so how people judge, evaluate these transfers, what pragmatic beliefs they have about what should parents provide for their adult children. So when we see the case of Poland, of course, it's not so specific. When we look around Europe, we see that young people nowadays face challenges in transitioning into adulthood. It's related to, of course, prolonged education. They spend more years in education, precarious jobs, adversities in the labor market. But I would say that most key challenge here is housing, and we observe in Europe declining availability of housing for young people, and this is the areas where parents step in and they mobilize their financial support resources in order to support areas as education, housing, and family formation. Of course, the scale and the form of this transfer differs geographically, and I will just show in a moment how Poland situates in this. But what I would like to stress that the more resources parents have, the more they provide for their children. So welfare parents provide more extensive financial support, and specifically middle-class parents, they use this long-term financial tools to help their children achieve at least the same status as they have. But of course, the ultimate aspiration is social advancement and upward mobility. So in these cases, parents work for the children in need. They act as safety nets, and they also help to achieve some aspirations. There are many metaphors in the scholarship of the role of parents: safety nets, scaffolding, oxygen tanks that will help you to live longer, metaphorically speaking. And so, as I said, Poland, the research on financial gifts in countries participating, for instance, in the SHARE survey, show that Poland is situated somewhere in the middle. It's closer to southern European countries. As you see, the scale, the extent to which parents provide for the children is more significant in wealthier countries. The top 5 are Switzerland, Sweden, Austria, Denmark, and Luxembourg being on the top. The main areas where parents engage in financial support, these are also the areas that parents consider worthy of supporting. This is the first one is education and achieving professional stability. So parents use financial resources to make sure that their children would achieve appropriate education, and they would be happy to cover relating costs, and they are eager to help financially to get a good job for the children, and for instance also establishing a business. Mostly parents who themselves, they are entrepreneurs, they are eager to encourage their children to not work, for instance, in the corporate environment, but to start their own business, and they would use their financial resources to help that, for instance, buying some equipment, cars, software, machines, and so on and so on. As I mentioned earlier, the key area which requires more support from parents is housing. It's definitely rising real estate prices make housing less and less affordable for young people. So parental assistance is crucial in that matter. There are many different strategies and to what extent parents are involved in helping their children. They can buy them an apartment. They can donate the apartment, family apartment that was in the family, inherited from previous generation. They can sell land and transform it into property, formal donations in order to secure the down payments, or even securing mortgages and helping with paying off mortgage rates. And so I would say that the housing it's the biggest gift that parents can offer, mostly for the children. It's even called in the scholarship like the greatest gift. And I would show you later this. This is the first step of building and accumulating wealth from the next generation. And the third area that I observed this parents' intervention, financial intervention, is creating next generation, creating family formation. So when the adult children decide to start the family on their own, and they have, so the next generation appears, grandchildren, and they have some needs. Grandparents then are eager to help with funding private education, private care, and extracurricular activities. So what we, in terms of what these financial transfers do, so they are used as a tool to achieving independence and accelerating, achieving these aspirations, doing in more quicker way. So there are some discrepancies between the aspirations young people have and the possibilities they face living, for instance, in a big city as Warsaw. So parents cover this, make up for this difference between actual cost and the aspirations. So it's, I would say that this is like the accelerating factor that young people might become more independent more quickly and achieve professional stability and secure the housing. Of course, having in mind that you have parents who even if they don't provide to you money now, they have resources so they can help you when you are in need. They act as a security cushion. So there is no like one-off significant financial transfers. Of course, there are significant transfers as buying flat, offering a car, and so on. But there are continued financial support, regular, on a smaller scale. So having in mind that you have parents that have resources and you can mobilize those resources in need, it tames the economic risks on the labor market, housing market, and encourage young people to undertake some risks, to venture, for instance, to running a business, and so on, so on. Definitely having a family with the resources, young people said that it helped them to decide to start the family on their own because they had in mind that they had this security cushion, these future grandparents that in the need they would help them. What is at stake here is a social mobility. Both parents and children say that it's about having better life, going up and up and up. So I would say that families use these resources in this multi-generational plan of position next generation higher and higher in social stratification. So parents want their children to have a better life that they had themselves, and they are eager to help to provide them this good start. This was the common category that was used by my interlocutors. Of course, economic success of their children is evidence of the success of parents. They feel feel pride, feel satisfaction, that they fulfill their role as good parents. And now I would like to talk a little bit about apartment. As I said, housing is a key area here. What we see that parents are very eager to help with supporting home ownership, specifically with the first apartment. But then what happens afterwards, it's usually the role of the young ones, and I would like to talk in the final 2 minutes about the aspirations. So the aspirations is as follows: is financial support from your parents help you to escape from renting. You can use these resources to get a mortgage, but the outcome, ultimate outcome is not to have a mortgage apartment, but to be outright home ownership, and then afterwards maybe buy another apartment and use it as an asset and use it as an investment and source of income. So what I'm observing among young people and their emerging aspirations is that after they become homeowners, they think about transforming this apartment into assets. So what used to be a family home is becoming a commodity and then an asset which can generate passive income. many young people decide, within my sample, they decided that it would be better to live freely in the future, to achieve financial freedom, and they justify it by that it's about creating capital, as Mikołaj mentioned, living in a society in capitalist society without capital. It's about creating capital, and so they want to be financially smart. They want to be a winner in this real estate game, and what at stake here is becoming investor and achieving financial freedom. I hope I will maybe expand on this during the discussion. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Marta. And now I'd like to invite Irina Dubrow-Tomescu to speak about measuring wealth in Poland. That's the first part of the title, and the second is Challenges and Opportunities from the Polish Panel Survey, PolPan. That's the second motive of this panel. One is to see what's the role of wealth, and the second is to ask to what extent is there a sort of Pearsonian division between economists dealing with wealth and sociologists dealing with capital and income based on labor. Okay, let's see.
Okay, thank you. We've seen already from these two presentations that wealth is very important to stratification. We also know it from the literature. It transfers across generations, it accumulates, and it shapes life chances. And this panel brings a pertinent question, namely, is wealth closing society? And in doing so, will it produce new patterns of inequality? Well, to answer such questions, we need representative data, not only on individual stratification resources, but also about their outcomes across their lifestyle, which means that we work with administrative data or we work with surveys. In both instances, this means that we need to ask people about their wealth. And that poses difficulties. Why? Because measuring wealth in surveys is not so easy. There are multiple dimensions. And if we measure them separately, we get better indicators, but it also makes the questionnaire longer and more demanding. And then we have to think, are we measuring wealth at the household level, or are we measuring it at the individual level? This is not the level. Okay. Are we measuring it at the household level, or are we measuring it at the individual level? If we measure it at the household level, then the burden on the person answering the survey becomes greater, though, of course, it's much more informative data for between household inequality. But on the other hand, it leaves out within household inequality, and we know that women and children within households are actually at greater risks of disadvantage. And then, irrespective of household or individual, we know that that questions that measure economic resources, income, and wealth are quite sensitive. And that usually people would answer okay about whether they have a car and a home, but as we start asking them about their savings and business equity and inheritance, then we have a lot of refusal or don't know, sometimes 30–40% of missing data. And if we're thinking then on top of that, that we want, again, data not only on wealth, but also on outcomes, so on determinants and consequences of wealth, which takes us into the realm of general surveys, we also know that these surveys generally miss the very wealthy and the very poor. So we will have to also think about the fact that we may not shed a full picture on inequality, but does this put us off? No. It also means that we need to realize that this representative data, if we want inequalities, then we need them. And for Poland, one of the good examples of data sets that ask and follows individuals over the life course is PolPan, the Polish Panel Survey. It's one of the longest running data sets with the individual as the unit of observation. It focuses on transformation of the social structure around main historical events of Poland, from the late state socialism through the post-communist transformation, accession to EU, and then moving through the economic crisis of 2008 and currently the rise of extreme politics. And there have been in 2023 8 waves. I will not, if people have questions about the methodology, I will talk about it later on. What may be interesting to mention here is that always this, up to now, these have been face-to-face surveys, and up to 2023 on pen and paper. In 2023, it's the first time that they were done with tablets. And it may also be interesting to mention that generally, except for the first wave, which was large, much larger, meaning close to 6,000 people, the wave-specific samples are about 2,000 respondents. Of them, always we try to follow panelists. Now, why the age bracket? Because initially when Polpan was started, the aim was to capture people in the labor force. And since this was not designed from the beginning as panel, that means that we kept throughout the data set, throughout the project, with the lower bound of 21, but people aged, so now they are 21 to 95 years old. What's nice about Polpan? Well, it covers in-depth participants' occupational trajectories and a wide range of factors that shape social position, from human and social capital to attitudes and opinions that also allow us to measure agency, since we know that not everything is deterministic. It also strives to measure economic resources in terms of income, I mean income, pensions, of course, but historically it also had some wealth items. Inheritance or transfers was covered only in 1998. And then in 2023, we realized, okay, maybe it is important, given that actually, and this is also a question that the panel posed, sociologists and wealth, and there has been research since the 2000s increasingly on the relevance of wealth, then to broaden the wealth indicators in Polpan. Well, to do so, we needed to pre-test these questions. And what I will do next, I will show you what items we considered including in a pilot study that involved 60 respondents. And it was conducted face-to-face, and these 60 respondents were selected such that they reflect the panel history of people in Poland, meaning folks that never were, the young ones that we had, but also people who participated before, gender and rural-urban divisions. So let's see what we found in the pilot. What am I showing here? Roughly the items, generally speaking, I mean, sometimes there are 2-3 items grouped under one of these indicators, but what we went after was monthly income and pensions, wealth with direct and indirect indicators, transfers, and then also as a proxy for wealth, understanding how financially capable or vulnerable folks are. And what I show here is, or what I marked especially, are the items with the non-response over 15%. I put in brackets there where the non-response is driven primarily by refusals, because we expect from the literature that income and sensitive wealth items people will not like very much to answer them. But I also marked actually, or at least I can point out to what is going on here, namely that in two instances, market value of additional house and insurance valuation of car, these questions posed quite a bit of difficulty for people in terms of their ability to know what to answer. So it was not so much that they weren't interested or didn't want to answer, but they were not. It was not possible for them to inform here what's going on. So. What really stood out here, and I will show you in a minute also through the debriefing interview and the stories that occurred through the debriefing of interviewers, is that actually, as we would expect in asking people about stuff that they do not necessarily want to declare, is that income and especially debts made them uncomfortable. And it was especially in the discussion with interviewers, both through the questionnaire they filled out and through the focus group, if we can call it in this way. I mean, the discussions that were conducted to understand in depth what their experiences were during the pre-testing, that they felt that actually participants explicitly said that they felt exposed and they felt irritated about being asked about their income and especially being asked about their total debts. And yes, we can understand, like this person said here, that it's not pleasant if I know that I have so much debt and there's not much I can do about it. But at the same time, what's also interesting, the interviewers themselves said that they felt uneasy, that when they were engaged with a battery of questions, which, you know, in traditional way in surveys goes with income, at least household data. I should mention actually that here we have income at the individual level, but household level also, and then these wealth items are measured for the household. So when they were asking these people all these questions, they themselves felt uncomfortable. So, okay, what did we do with this data? Well, we, if I go back for a minute to these items that were that had high non-response because of people not knowing, we decided that actually we will not ask about the market value of the additional house or land, and we decided that the car value we'll ask differently about by asking people what is the brand of their car and in what year they bought this car. And we also decided that we will not ask people about the total outstanding debts. It was too uncomfortable for everybody. But we kept the rest. So how do the data, what is the outcome after we collected the data? Well, as expected, income remains with high non-response, largely driven by refusals. Does it make it any better that very similar situation is in ESS 2023? They have 29.8 non-response on income, on household income, and 20% refusal. I'm not sure, but meaning that perhaps we would have wanted that there is a better source than Polpan, but we know that we are not alone. But what we also see that actually some of the items like savings, the question on people's savings and bank deposits, it worked better than in the pilot. And also contrary to the literature, many of the wealth items were actually below the unexpected high rate of non-response. So we have a bunch of items that are below 5% and then quite a few that are between 5 and 10% non-response rate, which means that, okay, what can we take from here? There are challenges for sure. Income questions remain problematic. A couple of wealth questions we had to drop. But most wealth and transfer measures, whether new or improved compared to other Polpan measures, perform okay, which gives Polpan stronger tools, I would say, to study income, wealth and inheritance across the life course, and then to connect Poland to the wider debates about inequality. Then I would just want to thank you for your attention, and I would like to thank the Polpan team and Maciek especially, who put this Polpan study on its feet in '88. I also would like to acknowledge, of course, our colleagues in IFIS PAN and CERN, because without it there wouldn't have been 2023 wave. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. We have now a few minutes for question of the chairs of the session. I will start. So thank you for your insightful talks. They were very interesting. But you were focusing on individual trajectories and reproduction of class positions. I would like to direct our discussion a bit to the collective mechanism that you can observe or you can find in your data. So how the interests are recognized within the classes and pursuing by those classes on a collective level. One of the examples we can think about is a so-called popular turn that we experienced a few years ago, that the interest of lower classes were recognized. But of course, we can also see some processes, I suppose so. We can see some processes within the upper class or middle class that try to establish their interest or defend them. And one of the contexts which is particularly interesting for me is the current political situation, in which we have almost only right-wing parties on the political scene and strong international threats. So the narrative about unity and national unity especially is very strong. So it can easily blur the class order or the class language as well. So, but beneath it, those classes try to establish themselves and protect their interests. So what are your thoughts about it? And before you answer, I just want to ask you to limit yourself to 3-5 minutes, and then we're going to proceed. Thank you.
Let's start with the order of presentation, if it's okay.
It works. Yeah, you mentioned like few quite important things like popular turn and politics and class, and some distinctions. I think I will start with those distinctions. So those, I think, processes or practices which help some classes to make this distance from the others. And as I'm focused in my research mostly on those educational and professional pathways, I would focus on education and see it as a process through which, and those educational, actually class educational decisions, which able middle class or upper class to make some quite certain distinctions from the people who can't provide their children with such cultural, social, and economic capital. And I think we all observe this in our environment. And it's a kind of defend class position. I think that the education is one way, probably housing is another way, and I think they can also relate to each other, because when we think about those strategies of middle class or upper class to those educational strategies, we see, and it's based on the interviews I collect, but also on other available studies, that it can be seen that among the middle class and upper class, there is a growing interest, for example, in some democratic social schools or in some private schools, which of course require quite high economic capital, but also interest in high-ranked public schools, which equip children with specific cultural and social forms of capital. And even if, in case of primary school, there is this rule, I think it's called district assignment, so which determines which public school your child should go based on your own residential address. there are still some ways of bypass the system. So, for example, you can move to the district with a good, very good, high-ranked public school, but you can also try to change your child address when your grandparents or your friends live in the district. So I would think about those different, very small strategies of dealing with the system, bypassing the system, and making those distinctions. But I think I would also put stress on other point you mentioned, this politicization and politicization of class, because I think it's quite important to see it. When we see that most people, like over 70% of Polish society, see themselves as middle class, I think it means that this class language is very weak, because where is working class and where is upper class, which is like mostly invisible. And this not seeing yourself in class terms and not recognizing your interest in the class terms, I think it's very easy. It's a way to you mentioned actually that it can cause that we stop seeing inequalities in economic class terms, but we somehow forward those our anger or dissatisfaction to the strangers based on some other categories, like, for example, nation. And I think it's a good example of this discussion is in David Ost's book, if you know it, The Defeat of Solidarity, because I think he presented very well how it was about working class in the 90s and about this forward of like losing class language and losing class identity. And I think I'm stopping here, maybe later I will go back.
Okay, so thank you for the question. I would say that class perceptions, class distinctions weren't the main focus of my research. Nevertheless, I try to reconstruct some class imaginaries of my interlocutors. I would say that the same phenomenon that you mentioned, that majority of them perceive themselves as a middle class, is a safe space to see yourself as a middle class. Even people with minimal wages were defining themselves as middle class, and those who had land, art, jewelry, numerous properties, they said, well, we are just middle class, and it's a safe space. So in terms of thinking about others, I would say that I didn't observe any solidarity with professional groups, with colleagues in your workspace. Perhaps it's a bias of my research, because we talked about family and we talked about how they this multi-generational plan. So if there is a solidarity, it's towards your kinship and specifically to the next generation. So it's not about extended family, uncles, cousins, even siblings, but it's about your offspring. And so the idea was to create this wealth and to pass it to the next generation, to push forward our family upwards and to win somehow in this competition. I'm in case of housing, the people would perceive this as a competition who has the more power in gaining more properties or in the right time for the right place. So I'm sorry, but I didn't see any signs of this solidarity outside of the family. And but there was, of course, this some distinctions. There's fear of dropping out from this middle class. So people want to have some assurances that they achieved something, that they are middle class, but they would work hard not to drop out of it, because they didn't want to consider themselves as losers in this game of classes, if I may.
Okay, I think that one question or one approach that we can take here is whether we are speaking about processes that happen in society, and therefore we study class differentiation in terms of certain properties of these classes, or we talk about what folks refer to themselves picking up as a narrative from the media as upper, middle, lower classes. We know that stratification research posits and works with a differentiated class measure that is sensitive to the properties of classes. And these properties of classes take into consideration education, occupation, and jobs. And if we think in these terms, then we know that we need a more fine-tuned classification than upper, middle, lower, because otherwise we lump together in the same group people who, if we think about what they earn or how much education they have or what kind of occupations they carry out, would not fall. I mean, we lump them in the same groups, although in a more distinct class schema, these people would fall in different categories. So I would say that if we're thinking about classes as a tool for studying stratification, and we are going not necessarily strictly with Gold or Portocarero's class schema, but something that captures the relationship to capital, the relationship to control over work, the relationship to control over skills, then we will be better able to understand what are patterns of accumulation of advantage, disadvantage in education, in housing, in political participation. And if I am to refer to Paul Pan very briefly, and we are thinking about processes, you asked about institutional processes, then I would say that we see with the data, again, we didn't analyze the 2023 data, but with data from 88 to 2017, making some just broad patterns, what we see? Well, we see that children of professionals and managers were much more likely to complete higher education and move into secure jobs, while children from manual and agricultural households were at much higher risk of precarity. We know that, and actually Mikołaj here and our colleagues, Michał Kotnarowski, looked into housing, and they found that actually there is inequality in financial property or access to mortgage credits and housing itself, if we're looking across class categories. That basically what I'm trying to say is that professionals and managers, again, secure housing through mortgages, that family help matters, of course, while manual and service groups remain disadvantaged. We also know that in terms of labor market trajectories, young people without good favorable social background are much more likely to experience precarious employment. And here, if we again, what is very crucial is that we look at type of employment contracts. And Anna Kirsten, I think, is one of the, and also Kopycka are prominent scholars that have used Paul Pan both in itself and in combination with other data to show actually the accumulation of advantage and disadvantage that happens in market trajectories. I would jump from here to what you mentioned about, or what you touched on about the political aspect. And I would say that also from Paul Pan, we know that there are cleavages based on voting. Now, workers and farmers more often support conservative parties, and then we have professionals and that are generally more liberal-leaning. The same class distinctions we see when it comes to desired redistribution policies and democracies, democratic value. On one hand, you see higher, as you would expect, that the workers and lower income groups express stronger preference for redistributive policies, but they are also much more skeptical towards democratic practice. So what would I take from here is that to talk about class consciousness, I think maybe also we have to think how we ask people a little bit differently other than, okay, upper, middle, lower class, if we want them to think about certain properties of their position in the class structure that may make them think about their belonging and perhaps coherence or common characteristics with others. Okay, too much talking.
Yeah, thank you very much. So it seems to that we do not have a class composition, but something like class-clan composition, and this is the probably direction that Mikołaj is going to take now.
I would say there is a tension between the presentations of Justyna and Marta and Irina. Of course, provocatively, I will put it. From Irina, what Irina is saying is that basically we do have class structure based on occupations, whereas the story of Justyna and Marta was about the clans reproducing the positions through kinship ties. Asked about articulation of interests, you were actually saying that was not our main area, but we didn't see this kind of perspective, right? So there is a tension between what we know from the research on classes and the research on wealth, in which you see a strong family kinship, reproduction, and logics, right? And my question is, to what extent, in your opinion, I am asking Justyna and Marta, does play the gift economy? So when you are given from your parents, should you somehow emancipate? Would you make your own choices? Would you relate to other roles than your family role, your kinship? So to what extent you see the strength of this family-based ties and dependencies related to class order?
Okay, thank you. So actually, there's a lot of tension within receiving financial support from parents and maintaining this idea of autonomy, of adulthood, of being independent person. So, because it's a paradox, because in order to be independent, you have to be for some time not independent, and so on. So I would say that my interlocutors they engage in many boundary making about how actually doesn't matter because it wasn't so significant because I pursued this career and I follow this meritocratic values. So I think it resonates with what you discovered in your research. So there's they have to somehow balancing this out, this tension. So I would say that they engage, I call it some blurring the significance of this financial help. So they downplay the amount of it. They underline their own choices, and they want to show that it's not about control, that they are independent, that they are pursuing their own goal, but it's a gray area, and there's a lot of struggle from both parents and adult children to maintain this idea that children are independent, but they have to engage in these blurring practices to hide it. For instance, when I was listening to your presentation about acknowledging the privilege, I thought that some of my locutors they are a little bit ashamed in terms of the relationships with their colleagues, friends, so they wouldn't reveal the amount of support they received from their parents. They would downplay it. They wouldn't say exact value of the property and so on. So there is some game of hiding, not to mentioning to your friends, colleagues, maybe not to destroy somehow the atmosphere when you. So some of them they feel that they were privileged, but didn't want to show it to the others. So this tension between receiving support and being independent is very much in it. But the practice is that both parties engage in it, but sometimes try to hide it.
Yeah, I would mostly agree because, as I showed in the presentation, there are different strategies of negotiation of those privileges. So you can see it, you can acknowledge it, but still you try to create this space for your own merits because it's about like biographical identity. You have to make sense of your life, and you have to make sense what you did and what you were given by parents, for example. So I think the strategies I mentioned are quite important in this. But there are also some stories of people who see those privileges, and mostly those who are ashamed of it. They try to maybe not reject those privileges because sometimes it's probably hard to do it. Maybe economically or as regards housing, you can do it, yeah. But they, for example, are involved in left-wing political activism, and I think it's a way to discuss with parents' attitudes, I suppose, or it's a kind of rebellion against parents' attitudes. But at the same time, you are still the one who is privileged. So it's more, I think, on the level of individual agency and identity rather than something different. Yeah.
I add one more question, just following it. To what extent, whose failure is to be blamed? Who's to blame on the failure? I mean, if you don't achieve, if the young don't achieve to to make a career, to make a step forward, etc., who's to blame?
Yeah, according to the interviews, it's you can blame the time of entering the profession. So as I mentioned, you can say that in case of grandparent, it was just easier to be a prominent professor than today. So you can blame a kind of system, neoliberal system of in case of academics, for example. You can blame parents as well, because there are also some narratives in which people say that like parents cared too much. So because this safe cushion, they didn't feel motivated enough to do something. So it was too easy for them, and that's it. So you can also blame your parents. It's not so much about blaming yourself, actually. When I'm thinking about my interviews, that's quite interesting. So you blame the system, the conditions, the structural conditions, or you blame parents for being too protective.
Okay, I think it's a good moment to stop a bit Q&A session with us and ask you, the public, for the questions. If there are no, we can, of course...
I will provide a microphone. So we haven't seen a lot of class solidarity in the speeches, but try to be solidar with your fellow colleagues, sociologists, and frame your question briefly. So we invite you to... Okay, with questions. Go, I try to navigate me because I didn't see everything.
Justyna over there, and then Marta.
Hello, my name is Justyna. I'm from the University of Warsaw. So some of the questions that arise in my head were already answered during the discussion, because I had two projects concerning housing, one with the middle class, second one with PhD students, and when listening to your presentations, what came across my mind was that we had very similar results. And one of them was the feeling of shame when it comes to intergenerational transfers in general. And I noticed that many of my interviewees tried to maybe not hide it, but they directly said that they feel ashamed because of it, and that they do not want to disclose it, especially to their peers. But what I wanted to ask you, and maybe raise some doubt about it, is the role of intergenerational transfers today among youngsters when it comes to housing, because I had an impression that, first of all, some of them said that, well, they will have some transfer, but in 30 or 40 years, so it's not important today, and today they struggle with housing. Second, some of them said that they have siblings, so they cannot really receive any real help in terms of housing. Yeah, so that's the question. Is it really today an important issue among young people in terms of housing to receive intergenerational transfer? Because I had a growing impression that sometimes it's not like that anymore.
Thank you. Let's collect two more questions and then we'll give you the floor.
Actually, I have one comment dealing with measurement of wealth. And Irina actually showed many elements. And the main question is whether these elements of wealth are cumulative or not. Because for inequality, it's very important whether we have this kind of consistency between various dimensions of inequality or not. And the results shows very much that more elements you take, the much more inequality you have. And this is the one thing which is very important from the point of view of advantages. But I would say something about actually how it plays in time. We have a lot of evidence that inequalities rise, and that actually if we are taking many of these elements, then we are in the situation in which the discrepancy between, however we will define this privileged class and the very these who are at the bottom, it raises, the difference raises at least in relative terms. Because it's not that the lower class or the poorer class is poorer and poorer, but it's relatively poorer. That is, the increase is much slower than in the case of this privileged class at the top. And this is very important issue of inequality in Poland. But I admire very much to studying the transfer of wealth through generations. And who helps whom is very important issue. But we should not neglect the fact that children also helps parents. And actually the wealth also goes to parents, especially for these younger people or younger generation, who helps parents who are on their pension, which is very low. And this is actually evidence in many studies already, that the transfer, intergenerational transfer goes in two ways. And the last comment which I would like to make is actually dealing with institutional aspects of inequality. The fact that actually we have over 5,000 organizations which are helping in many ways business people, and we have 1,050 unions, labor unions, for which only every 10 of employed people belong. The strength of the organizations for business and influence of the business on politics is uncomparable for this kind of influence of labor unions, which are to which very few people belong, and unions have very little power. And this, I think that this must be very much stressed, because for the class inequalities, this institutional base is very important. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other questions?
Mariola Bieńko, University of Warsaw. I wonder, what about gender? Have you noticed any gender differences in your research projects? Thank you.
All right, we've got 3 questions. Let's make a first round. I think the questions were to all of you, so feel free to answer.
Okay, so thank you for these questions. And there also this. You mentioned you're studying young PhD students. Now, I would like to underline the fact that in my research, there were only very young people. These adult children were up to 40 years old. So it's very important. The timing here is a crucial one. So, of course, it's different when someone received financial help 5 years ago and is receiving it now. You mentioned siblings. Yes, it's a very fortunate situation when you are the only child and you, for instance, marry our only child, and all the family resources goes to you too. But it's not always the case. So many of us have siblings, and parents have to somehow decide what to do with their resources, how to manage, distribute it among siblings, and there are many struggles how to do it in a fair way. So it's about fairness. There are different rules of fairness. Is it fair to each child should receive the same amount of money, but what does it mean when we have inflation? What does it mean when my sister received a specific amount of money 3 years ago, and my parents are now retired? They don't have sources of additional income. Their savings are not that vast anymore. So there is a lot of tension how to do it right, how to distribute the resource among the children, and the timing here plays a crucial role, because people are in different positions when their children want to become independent. So it's not like one way how to do it right. Should we support children who are struggling, they are in need, they have been less fortunate on the labor market, or should we reward the good children who are having great career, and we should put more money into it? So there are different strategies, and in the scholarship there are great papers about how to manage this fairness and in distributing amount of money and wealth among different children. And in case of Professor Słomczyński comment about different directions of intergenerational transfers, of course there is downward transfers, upward transfers. I mean, my research focusing on downward transfers, financial transfers, but we of course know there are transfers of emotions, time, care, and so on. So my research is strictly focused on downward financial transfers. But even in this case, downward transfers dominate, financial transfers dominate, because it's more likely that parents would support their adult children, that adult children would support their parents. Nevertheless, timing also is here the key factor here, because the generations and the amount of their pensions would be changing. Yes, so the generation who is now retired, they can enjoy different pension that the next generation that when they become retirees. So I think it will change. It will fluctuate according to demographic factors and so on.
And what about gender issues? Because you mentioned about these distributions, and they are not so genderized, I think, that it used to be. For example, the custom that the women go to the husband's house, so we don't have to care about daughters because they're going to have a place to live. Yes, did you note something?
Yes, I would say that gender question is question that I receive a lot, because many people are interested in this. What are the differences? And I know that in different countries, scholarships show some significant differences. For instance, in France, especially when it comes to passing a great amount of wealth. Gender of Capital is a great book, I think published 3-4 years ago, which we show this phenomenon. I would say in my Polish case, I was really sensitive to this issue, but I haven't observed any specific differences in distinguishing between sons and daughters, or and some expectations, and it was mostly, especially when in my sample there were siblings on different genders and so on. So no specific gender differences in my research. I didn't observe that.
Thank you.
Well, unfortunately, we do find the gender differences when we think at the broader patterns of inequality. And again, if we're thinking in terms of, for example, the outcome of the 2008 economic crisis and Poland priding itself as being the green island, actually, when we see women's experiences, we find that the intersection of woman and class was actually significant, and that for female farmers and farm laborers, they were about 4 times more likely than female professionals to find it very difficult to live on the current income. And okay, this is not even going into the income inequalities in earnings and so on. So does depend of, again, what we're thinking of when we're thinking about patterns of inequality. And also, and this is actually what I wanted to bring the discussion back a little bit, just to stress the point that what I tried to say in the beginning is that there is a difference between the fact that we may want to understand people's class consciousness and hence acting on whatever they believe their interests are, and whether we want to see if in a given society class groups matter for inequality patterns. And it is, I think Marx was complaining about folks not having class consciousness even when class divisions were much harder. So it's a different question of whether, to what extent people are aware about their class consciousness and to what extent they act upon it, and whether class relations matter for inequality patterns.
Thank you. Are there further questions?
We have a time for 1, maybe 2 questions.
If not, then
It's nice outside.
Let me again provoke a bit. My take is that perhaps we've got patrimonial capitalism in which the kinship relations, so reproduction of the capital and wealth through the kinship relationships, is so strong that there is no need for the articulation for collective interest. And the association and identification with occupational roles is much weaker as a kind of pocket. A package you have within the family ties is so strong. How would you agree with it? I will put one more specific thing, and it relates both to Paul Pan research and to Marta's say. I would say, to what extent would you agree that perhaps when people are asked about the wealth and they are not treating it as an asset, so as capitalists, they are a bit shy and they are treating it morally as a way, as a sort of moral burden that comes within their life. So if I don't achieve in terms of capital, I fail, right? Personally, morally, etc., etc. And only the real upper class has this sense and this kind of liberty to treat such assets as housing as an asset, of which you know exactly the price, the value, you know what to do, etc., etc. And here I refer also to the hard data. In Poland, housing mobility is very low. It's 6 years per household. That's the average when people change one house to the other. The level of inheritance is twice bigger than in most of the European countries. So it's really strong current going, in this direction. To what extent you see it and to what extent you disagree with it?
Maybe I will answer this. I forget to mention one thing when I was talking about this thinking about family only, this having solidarity towards kinship and so on. Many of my interlocutors were saying, well, maybe not directly, but sometimes directly, that they don't have much hope in a state, in the state policy. It's their own private matter to secure these key areas I mentioned earlier. So it's up to me and up to my family to secure the housing, because there is no solutions from the state. So I won't rely on public services. I prefer go to the private doctor, or if it weren't my parents, my child, one woman said my child would go to the public kindergarten. And I asked her, what would happen if your child went to this public kindergarten? Well, maybe nothing bad, but still the strong preference is that the private kindergarten is good. So I observed this perceived invisibility of the state, of the policy of state, and relying on your own, on your family. It's a family matter to resolve all this issue. And can you once again repeat your question, the last one?
The question is on how, to what extent you see that these moral obligations towards families and the package you get from your family is so strong that this discourages people to relate and to identify with their occupational roles, and to admit that failing in your career, in your occupational career, is a real issue.
I'm sorry, I don't think I have an answer to that, because it's not something that we will be discussing. So I'm sorry, I cannot answer. I don't know the answer to it.
I think maybe I can try at least a bit, because in my interviews there are stories of people who also negotiate of scope of reproduction in relation to their parents. So if you have very successful professor as a father or grandfather, you can still negotiated, and not even if you have PhD. And I'm referring to a very specific person. She holds PhD in different discipline, and it was one way to not avoid reproduction, but just change something about it. She rents a flat because she doesn't want to have own flat. So her way of life is like a kind of trying to change something in this family transmission. So there are some cases to look for other scenarios of your life. Or I have a story of another business owner whose father works as a manager, top manager in international company. And his whole childhood was focused on being successful. And he has own company, but he's trying to negotiate the time he can divide between work and family, because he had some deficit in family time as a child. So he tries to do something, to do it differently. He's still quite rich, I would say, but he admits that he wouldn't like to be as rich as his father because he doesn't need it. So there are some small, I think, ways, strategies to look for some other scenarios. But actually, when we ask our interviewees about their parental ideas, it seems that they also they imagine their kids as those who will reproduce. So yeah, I think it's a complicated picture.
Okay. Would you like to add something?
Well, I would like to add that generally stratification research in Western countries has shown that parental and parental resources, both education and occupation of parents, matter for achievement, but do not overpower individual characteristics. So even if you take into consideration that they operate indirectly and indirectly, right? They operate on what education you get, and then indirectly they operate because you continue to support your people, your children, and we know that there are differences across occupational groups or classes, or depending by stratification measures. There is sufficient room for individual characteristics to have significant effects above and beyond parental characteristics. So I do not think that we have evidence that would say that at this point it's just parental characteristics that matter. On the contrary, there is evidence that individual characteristics and we can and also opportunities that people create. Basically, if we're thinking about the theory of cumulative inequality, there is the issue that actually individuals, in addition to the structural determinants, people react to risks and opportunities in different way, also because there are certain psychological features that people have. And these interact, of course, with resources, but we do not live in a deterministic way. World, I'm sorry.
Thank you. Well, that was my provocation, actually. Okay, so I think we should stop here. Before I thank, I think I hope we sparkled a bit your interest in seeing the wealth as something to be researched by sociologists and not only economists. As we see, it's quite hard, both methodologically and in terms of the categories we are operating. So I'm leaving you with the thoughts of and then reflections of our distinctive panelists. I would like to thank Justyna, Kajta, Marta, Olcoń-Kubicka, Irina, Tomescu, Dubrow for their talk, and thank you for your attendance and attention.
Thank you.
We also thank you for putting this together, and it's a lot of work.